I will read one of my favorite poems called The Invitation by Oriah Mountain Dreamer. It doesn't interest me what you do for a living. I want to know what you ache for and if you dare to dream of meeting your heart's longing. It doesn't interest me how old you are. I want to know if you will risk looking like a fool for love, for your dream, for the adventure of being alive. It doesn't interest me what planets are squaring your moon. I want to know if you have touched the center of your own sorrow, if you have been opened by life's betrayals or have become shriveled and closed from fear of further pain. I want to know if you can sit with pain, mine or your own, without moving to hide it, or fade it, or fix it. I want to know if you can be with joy, mine or your own, and if you can dance with wildness and let the ecstasy fill you to the tips of your fingers and toes, without cautioning us to be careful, to be realistic, to remember the limitations of being human. It doesn't interest me if the story you're telling me is true. I want to know if you can disappoint another to be true to yourself. If you can bear the accusation of betrayal and not betray your own soul. If you can be faithless and therefore trustworthy. I want to know if you can see beauty even when it's not pretty, every day. And if you can source your own life from its presence. I want to know if you can live with failure, yours and mine, and still stand at the edge of the lake and shout to the silver of the full moon, yes! It doesn't interest me to know where you live or how much money you have. I want to know if you can get up after a night of grief and despair, weary and bruised to the bone, and do what needs to be done to feed the children. It doesn't interest me who you know or how you came to be here. I want to know if you will stand in the center of the fire with me and not shrink back. It doesn't interest me where or what or with whom you have studied. I want to know what sustains you from the inside when all else falls away. I want to know if you can be alone with yourself. And if you truly like the company you keep in the empty moments. Welcome everyone, so grateful to have you with me again. It's been a while. I've been taking some time off to go deep into another awakening on my own. And so the reason that I do this video now is partly because of that, inspiration from that. And it's also because I have this growing sense of a split or a polarity that is growing within humanity. So I'm seeing more and more of us are really heading to this lighter version of ourselves, to this version that is moving away from suffering and into ease. And that is beautiful. And there are more of us now than ever before who are moving into deep pain and deep suffering. And I want to address both of those today because I feel that now more than ever before, those of us who are rising really need to take care that we're not creating a bubble around ourselves where we can enjoy ourselves without thinking about another. We really need to be there and support the ones who are going through their first awakenings or huge periods of suffering right now. So if you are going through a personal awakening right now and it's really tough, then first of all, I want you to know that these feelings are normal. And you may not want to hear it again, but this is actually needed. Even the deepest depths of meaninglessness, this is where you get to learn what your meaning truly is. And as humans, I know this firsthand. I've had a lot of resistance to those moments where everything feels pointless, where everything is falling apart and it seems like we have nothing left to live for. And it makes sense to have resistance to that, of course, and there's also a huge creative magic in that. And so I'm not asking you to hold space for that if you're suffering right now, but know that I am here holding space for that for you. I believe in you. So take any support that you need, allow it to be messy, reach out, and take this opportunity to go deeper. So in my personal life, finding meaning has been a lot about knowing, learning the truth of who I am and finding my own inner truth. And coming back to this poem, that was actually my first initiation, my start on the journey to find that truth. Looking back now, I can actually say that in some way or another, I've been through every single part of that poem, part of that journey. And of course, today I'm looking specifically at the line, I want to know what sustains you from the inside when all else falls away. Because in my experience, that is when we most deeply get to know our truth. Now, before we dive any deeper, I want to address how spiritual values may actually hinder our spiritual evolution. So to bring an example to this, I was watching a Sadhguru live event the other week, and Sadhguru was having a question from a young woman who had recently lost her mother. And it was quite plain that this woman was very much struggling. It was very hard for her to hold the intensity of the grief and the feelings, the overwhelm. And Sadhguru, being who he is, of course, replied in his yogic detached manner, essentially to the point of why, when we are eternal beings, why grieve a body that was always temporary anyway? And of course, I understand where he comes from. That is absolutely true. So we have this spiritual high truth that we are eternal beings, but the problem was I didn't feel that he received her where she was in her grief at all. And so he wasn't addressing the personal, the human truth at all. And that was especially interesting to me because so much of that talk, he actually talked about the divine feminine and how that has been suppressed for centuries and really is on the decline, and we need to basically do everything that we can in order to support and encourage the divine feminine within ourselves and in the world around us. This is something that he really promotes, and yet he wasn't in a position to recognize that the divine feminine is not just in the impersonal creative force, it's in the personal creative force. And the way that creation happens embodied in human beings is by emotions. So emotions is a crucial part of how the divine feminine becomes embodied in human beings, okay? And so that means we need to really go into the emotion and meet them where they are. So to say that another way, being present does not just mean being present with the senses, even if you count the inner senses, the inner and outer senses. It also means to be unconditionally present with whatever emotional state we feel inside us. Now, I don't believe that Sadhguru disagrees with that. I believe that he's trying to help us not get lost in the deep depths of feelings such as grief, which is understandable. And I have seen in all of my experience and working with people as well, that what helps an ordinary human being to move past a heavy feeling such as grief is not to try to silence it. It is to meet it fully. It is to feel it completely and entirely, let it move through us. Some of those feelings come with the need, and when we feel it fully, we can meet that need. And whatever it is, if we are completely present with it, then it can move through. And so I especially wanted to address that instead of silencing emotions, we can use the intensity of those emotions for our spiritual awakening. In fact, I believe that most of us do it that way. I believe that most of us come onto the awakening path because we have endured a lot of pain. When our world falls apart, it confronts us with everything we most avoid. The powerlessness of watching it all go down and being utterly unable to stop it. The terror of being rootless, lost and alone in the world. The grief of having loved and lost, of having felt joy only to have it stolen again. The despair of having nothing left to live for. We do meet ourselves in the pain if we allow ourselves to truly feel it. I have learned that the suffering comes from my own resistance to the truth of life as it is. The resistance to feeling all the feelings evoked by that truth. Each and every time I let go, pushed by pain to finally feel those feelings at their depth, after the brief intensity of feeling it all, what I am left with is relief. On the other side of pain, there is a peace so profound that words cannot capture it. So how do we go from the world falling apart around us, within us, to that peace? Well, of course, it isn't possible to just encapsulate that in a short video. We're all individual, we all have non-linear paths, but from my experience, what I've seen in myself and others, there are a few key things to look out for, a few key things to cultivate to help us move from that mud of existence to become the lotus. And the first and really final step, and following all along the way, is self-trust, cultivating self-trust. Everything else, in my opinion, builds on that. And I will do a separate episode on that because it's been such an important part of my journey and what I see with others. But for now, to keep it brief, I will simply say this: commit to do everything you can to stop abandoning yourself. And when I say that, I include every area of your life, every aspect of your being, body, emotions, mental, energetic. Stop abandoning yourself. Now, this is a practice. It does not mean that we need to master every single life area all at once. Of course, that would be impossible. That wouldn't be a human task for most of us anyway. But this is not what I'm meaning with not abandoning ourselves, actually. And this is where heart opening and intuition comes in, because when we have that, and it's something that we cultivate by practicing not abandoning ourselves, then we know from our heart, from our intuition, what is the priority, moment to moment, for our own well-being and for the well-being of others, because that will shift and change. But if we can tune into our heart, into our intuition, then we always can know what is the highest priority, and then we do that. All the other things can wait. Again, we don't have to master it all. We just do that one thing, take action on that one thing that will lead us to self-trust, that will lead us to caretaking of ourselves and others. Now, we'll actually talk a bit more about acting on your priorities soon, but before we can even go there, I think the next step sounds simple, isn't that simple? It's believe that you can do it. Especially if you're in a dark night of the soul, if you're in a really, really low place. I know just how pointless it can feel, and I know it can be very hard to believe. but I'm here to hold space for you. Believe that you can take yourself out of that situation. So I know from my own experience, it's really like that saying, pulling yourself up by the bootstraps. That's literally what we do sometimes, maybe not literally, but it feels that way. And if we have arrived at the lowest low, or what feels like the lowest low, or how we do not want our life to be, then we know that for sure we have experienced that, and we know where we want to go instead. And so it's only we that can bring us from one to the other, and we can do it. This is my promise to you. You could even do it in one moment. Your mind is that powerful. Now, adopting this belief, of course, is a practice in itself. It goes hand in hand with developing self-trust. For some of us, it's a real work to do it, especially if you're like me and you've spent much of a lifetime perfecting the skill of self-doubting and second-guessing yourself. It's work, but stick to it. Stick to it, even if the circumstances show you the opposite of what you're trying to tell yourself, that you can change your life. Stick to it. Especially then, focus on what you can do. Focus on what is in your control to change, and do that. Okay. It builds self-trust over time. Don't give up. Now, the next few steps you've heard me say quite a few times. I will say them again for the ones in the back. And the reason that I keep repeating them is that it might be easy to agree in logic in our mind, and then actually going to apply it into every situation of life, into every emotion, is a practice. And that practice is to accept that pain is a reality. You cannot accept pain. And then choose to enter the pain with curiosity, and then change your relationship with that pain, or with any moment that you're meeting pain and joy. It really is possible to meet any emotional state with curiosity. When I go into a dark night nowadays, I'm having a night of despair and grief, of loss, I don't resist it anymore. I've been there so many times, I guess, that I know that I can hold all of that. I can go fully into the sensations of those feelings and hold it in my body. And at the same time, be the observer, be curious about it, see, is there anything else I can learn from this? And usually there is, right? And as I said before, there's always relief when I do this. And so with that curiosity, I can actually honestly say that I don't really avoid that pain that much anymore, at least not nearly as much as I used to do, because a part of me really enjoys learning from this journey we call life. And that is my freedom. That means that I can move through life and not avoid it, whatever I'm getting to feel from what's happening outside of me. So it's really only when we can fully accept that we cannot escape pain that we can stop avoiding it. And when we finally stop wasting all our energy on avoiding the pain, there is so much space to experience more presence with the joyful things in life. And there is freedom in the world, because when you've felt every emotion at their depth, and you know that you can hold it all, then you know that whatever happens on the outside, whatever person comes and rocks your world, you know that you will not be completely rocked out of your center. You may trip a little bit, but you can come back to center. And again, this is not because you are being protected or protecting yourself from emotion. You're allowing yourself to feel it all. you're just letting it flow through you so you can truly move through the world with your heart open. So pain is a part of life. Suffering does not have to be. So what is it that we can learn from all that suffering? And to know that, now we're heading to the next point, we need to know where are we now exactly, and where would we want to be, and what is the discrepancy that is causing us so much suffering, in the smallest to the biggest. So expectations do cause suffering, but it's not really the fault of the expectations. Expectations can be a good thing. It can be actually the empowering tool to line with life as we want to live it. And that brings us to the next point, which is finding out your values. What do you truly value? If you were to list every single thing that you do in a normal day, especially the things that you do more or less every day, and also the things you want to do but don't usually do in a normal day, you write all that down and then you compare it to your dreamed up ideal day, what you would be doing if you lived the best of your days. Okay, now this exercise will tell you a lot about the difference between your conscious values and your subconscious values. And so we all have subconscious drivers that are coming from all of the desires that we're not allowing ourselves to play out, that maybe we think they're irresponsible or immature or even impossible. Now, many times that is a trauma belief, because we as human beings came with the power to realize our desires. They're not there for no reason. And so maybe they would not be realized in exactly the way we imagine, but we definitely have the power to realize them. So living a life that feels truly aligned begins to come easy when you know your core values, what they truly are, and when you begin to align with them in action, so embodying your core values. And I'll make another video of this too, because it's been such a key part in my own journey, from feeling unguided and lost to figuring out who I am and what I value in this life. But for now, I simply invite you to consider that every single decision that you make tells a story about how you want to show up in the world. Now, are you showing up in a way that truly and fully reflects your highest, your core values? Are you even aware what your core values are? Now, getting back to the theme here, when everything seems to be falling apart, that is when those values that we thought were our core values get tested. Are they withstanding this or not? That's really, I feel, one of the big questions when we have the rug pulled out under us. What remains and what falls away? And that's not a bad thing, because we don't want to keep anything in our life that isn't authentic. So it reveals what your deepest truth is and what is not so important after all. And then you can bring more of your precious energy, more of your precious attention to what really matters to you. So what does all this mean for how I actually want to show up in the world? I am observing that we're going through a collective awakening, and it's like the old rules aren't applying anymore, and it's painful for all of us to try to find our footing, to try to figure out once again where we fit into all this. It's pushing us to ask all the bigger questions, all of us, such as, what is the meaning of life? What is the meaning in my personal suffering? What am I to learn from this? And how can I use that in a way that I can be a positive force in the world. What does that even mean to me? If I were to rebuild a new, more beautiful world, what does that new, beautiful world mean to me? What are my core values that I would build it from? So our suffering, our trauma, it carries the seed to our contribution in this world, to our purpose. This is part of why I am able to welcome pain now, because it teaches me, it is my teacher as to how I can be a better service in this world. Now that freedom from being able to walk through the world with the heart open that I mentioned before, I believe that we're all being called to that. Maybe not everyone will answer the call, but we're all being called. You see, enlightenment doesn't come, I believe, without being able to have your heart open to all the pain and suffering and also all the joy and love in the world. You cannot truly take all of the world in its entirety and love it in its entirety if you cannot hold all of its pain and all of its suffering as much as you can hold all of its love. I actually asked Near, my friend, the other week, how might you see externally on a person that they are enlightened? And him having spent many years alongside a person he felt to be enlightened, he said he always has tears in his eyes because he's able to see the pain and suffering of a person and also the love that they are, and he can see the soul's pain of the human self not being able to feel and express all of that love. That is to take in the entirety of a person and be present unconditionally with that person. And I feel that we're being called to that. So is enlightenment an aspiration of yours? Is love a core value of yours? If it is, how could you embody this completely and fully, even as the world trembles? How would you still embody your values, even if it is the last thing that you do? Now, if that sounded a bit bleak and dark just now, don't lose hope. This next point will balance with a reminder that life is actually full of joy, of blessings, of wonder and awe, of beauty. And in order to bring ourselves from low and back again to savoring what it is to be a human, we need to really focus on the joy in the small things. We become open to seeing the beauty, the joy, the love when we actively invite it in, when we make a conscious choice to look for it and bring it into our days in action. So for me right now, it's savoring the autumn leaves and the clear, cold, starry nights that we have here now. It's the birds on the feeder, it's a full fruit bowl, it's being able to walk in nature, or to write a poem, or to draw a picture. Little small things that bring me joy. So what brings you joy? How much do you bring joy and playfulness and love and gratitude into your day? Now, for some of you watching, this may actually feel pretty far away. And I understand that, I've been there. And so I challenge you to simply choose one thing, just one thing every day that you do for yourself every day. Maybe you have a list of things that you can choose from to do, but you set one time every day when you just appreciate and be present with that thing, that joyful thing, that playful thing. What could that thing be? When you start with this, if you're at a real low point, it might not actually feel fun. Even if you do something that should have been playful, that used to be playful, and that's okay. And so I want to say that the most important thing then is that you are showing up for yourself. You're showing up for the part of you that needs that joy, that needs that play, okay? And every time you show up in action and give time and space for that, you build a little bit of trust to that part of yourself. And the more trust that you build, the more natural and easy that will come. The play and the joy will come to you. It builds over time, and it's practice, it's work again, but it's worth it. It's so worth it. And for those of you who already do have habits that invite joy and play and love and gratitude into your daily life, I challenge you to, how can you bring that to even more aspects of your life? How can you bring that even more into your daily habits? The more we practice, the easier it gets, and eventually we become able to pour all of that love, all of that joy into our work, into whatever we're doing. Even maybe paying the bills is a stretch, but we can try. There's nothing that's impossible. And for those of you who still feel like you need permission to take time out of your day just to play, I am here to tell you this. You are allowed to choose whatever in your life feels most joyful, and you're not only allowed to do that, you're even encouraged to do so. I feel that this is a practice of yoga, okay? Because playfulness is such a fundamental quality of who we are. We are playful creators of this life, and the more we get to practice that, the more we get to feel that through our day-to-day activities, the more we feel that empowerment, the more we feel like that creator. We feel that we can shift our life into more and more ease and joyfulness. And so it's a fundamental quality to cultivate, and you can call it your spiritual practice if you want to. I do. Now, of course, the biggest art again is to fully own and play with both the shadow and the light aspects of our life. Again, it is the life practice, and we're all here to learn the dance. I want to address that if you are on the awakening journey now and you're going through a dark phase and you feel that all of this is pretty far away from you, don't give up, okay? As long as you're making the effort to understand yourself, to take care of yourself, to love yourself and others, you will get there. Even when your reality seems to point to something opposite at this time, don't give up. It's temporary. Keep working at yourself and you will get there. So finally, I'm about to wrap this up, and I want to just honor the fact that living in times of collective awakening, as we're doing now, and in personal awakening that I believe many watching are also doing, can feel as chaotic and as overwhelming as being a newborn and just learning in that intensity, that intense first phase of life when we're trying to get our footing in a new existence. So we need to honor that. We need to honor the overwhelm, the everything that we feel around it, also the excitement. It's all part of learning to exist at this new level of being, right? A day will come when you're ready to make sense of all the pain and all the suffering that you've been through. A day will come when you can feel in your heart emotionally that nothing is ever lost. When you can feel that even the loss, even the roller coasters and the bleak days and the sleepless nights, it was all worth it for that freedom that it gave you to find yourself and to be able to live as yourself without justification, unapologetically. Unfortunately, this liberation does not come by sitting around waiting for better days. We have to take the steps, and we can do it. We are always that powerful. It is the beauty of being human. We have all the power within us. No matter how powerless and lost we may feel, in moments of despair, we can turn the ship around from stormy seas and sail to the sheltered cove that is the love in our heart. So that is all that I have for you today. I hope it was inspiring or that you got something out of it today. If something was evoked for you or you have any questions, please comment below. Hit the like button if you like this video. I thank you for your presence with me today, and I hope to see you next time. Namaste.